Hello, and welcome to Sobercast. We provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast format. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into the virtual basket. Also, if you're a member of NA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, NAPOD. NAPOD features NA speakers and workshops in the same format as Sobercast. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for NAPOD, N-A-P-O-D, all one word, on any podcast player app, or go to napod.xyz if you'd like to listen online. Hope you enjoy the podcast and have a great day.
Beginners Group, welcome to tonight's main speaker, Alison from Alison A Beginners Group.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Alison.
Hi, I'm Alison A, alcoholic. Lucy, thank you for asking me to do this. It's great to be with you guys, and if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous, welcome. I don't know what I'm going to say tonight. I have nothing to say, so you better just sit down and we'll be here till 9 o'clock. Nothing to say. Pardon me. I am so grateful to be in San Antonio and at the International Convention. This is my second international. I had resentments during the last two conventions and didn't make those. And I was last in San Diego in '95 and had a great time there. So I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend while you're here. I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did not feel that way when I got here. I just knew that I could no longer take a drink, and I didn't know what y'all were going to require of me. I just knew that I needed to not be living the way I was living. And I will tell you, I have two sisters and a brother. We're all been, somehow my parents got cursed with the four of us because we've all suffered from this thing in one way or another. But I started drinking at the age of 15. I grew up in Alvin, Texas, a few hundred miles east of here. And I hated Alvin, Texas. I hate country music. I thought, when I was growing up, it was my siblings. I've heard people up here talking about blaming other people for their problems, and it was my siblings' fault. It was the fact that when I turned 13, I turned into a giant pimple. That was why I was feeling so bad. It was because I hated country music and rice farming, which is all that was around me at the time. And when I was 15 years old, I had my first drunk. Now, I have an older sister who's entertained coming here. And she was always more popular than me, my sister. She was well known. She was a great athlete, but she was also a drinker. And when I was that age, like I said, I was like a big zit, I thought. And I was very insecure. I felt terrible. I felt really ugly. And I wanted to be popular like my sister. And, it occurred to me if I could be a cheerleader like my sister, then you would pretty much all know that I was better than you. And I don't know if any of y'all... and that was my solution to my life. But, my sister drank too. And I decided at the end of my freshman year in high school I was gonna get drunk. And I had someone buy me a bottle of Strawberry Hill. I wanted Tickle Pink, got the Strawberry Hill. I drank a 6-pack of beer that night, and my life changed. The insanity of being just consumed with myself. I wasn't ugly anymore when I drank that night. The magic of alcohol and the solution that alcohol brought into my life happened that night in 1992. That's the year I got sober, in 1983. And I loved drinking. Alcohol was the solution for me. Alcohol was the power that I needed in my life that I didn't have. And I felt magical. I was now attractive. I was now one that fit in. And I never knew that alcohol was going to provide that solution for me. I just knew that when my sister drank, she was popular. My sister dated, and I wanted to date, and I found a lot more than that when I drank. First night I got drunk, the magic of alcohol happened for me. I felt powerful in my life. I got a big hickey on my neck, and that was the pattern of what happened to me for the next 12 years every time I took a sip. And when I was 18 years old, I moved to Los Angeles, California. I decided that I told my parents I wanted to be in fashion merchandising, and I was going to go to a fashion school in downtown L.A. The subtitle of all that was that there was this singer in this band, and I knew his name was David Lee Roth, and he sung for this band called Van Halen. And I knew if he just laid his eyes upon me, all would be good in the world. And I I moved to LA to find him and marry him, and I went to Los Angeles when I was 18 years old, and it took me 11 years to find him, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm in Los Angeles. I live outside of downtown Los Angeles. I'm 18 years old. I'm going to fashion school for one semester, and I dropped out. And my roommate is from Seattle, Washington, and they grow some wonderful things up there. But I had this roommate from Seattle, and I was terrified. I was terrified of living in LA. I was a little, kind of like a redneck chick living, in big city Los Angeles, terrified. And drinking really helped me to feel some power in my life. Alcohol allowed me to get through those days in LA when I was new to the city. I found school to be rather boring, and David Lee Roth wasn't in fashion school, so there was no reason to really go there. I was hitchhiking. I started hitchhiking and hanging out in the bars in Hollywood and chasing anybody who said he wanted to make an album. I spent 12 years trolling the streets of Hollywood and hanging out in concerts and backstage and doing those kinds of things and giving up any type of integrity or self-respect my parents ever tried to teach me. I had absolutely no sense of self-worth. I was a scared little girl trying to get through this world using any skills I thought I had, and it didn't involve my brain. And that was my life. I didn't know how to live amongst you all. I didn't know how I was going to be okay around you. I was continually looking for a power greater than myself in my life. And when I wasn't drunk, I was looking for some guy to make me feel like I was going to be safe. My life was miserable. It was very redundant. It involved, a few square blocks in Los Angeles, and it was ugly. In 1991, I was working down at the Santa Monica Pier. I became a bartender. No big surprise there. I was working on the Santa Monica Pier as a bartender. They were closing the Santa Monica Pier so that they could rebuild and build the amusement park that's there now. And I got laid off, and so I was out of work for a while. I was living with a girl at that time who was dating a friend of mine, and she had a wonderful career. She made tons of money, and she got lots of attention. And I said, do you think I could get an interview at your company? And she said, sure, let me look into it. And I'm 26 years old, and I go into this. I go into the Hollywood Tropicana female Foxy boxing bar, and I became. She was a mud wrestler from Long Island, New York. And towards the end of my drinking, I became a cocktail waitress at the Hollywood Tropicana. I didn't quite have the self-esteem of donning a bathing suit and dancing in front of you, but I could do it in lingerie, and that's how I made my income. And that was the last year of my drinking. At that time, my father was sick in Texas. There had been a lot of separation with him. My father was strict. He was kind of a hero of mine. My father was an aerospace engineer, and I didn't like discipline in my life, and I really separated myself from him. And at the time that I'm working at the Tropicana, my father got sick, and he had a disease called Lou Gehrig's disease. And I found it difficult to spend time with my father and fly back to see him, frankly, because his disease and his terminal illness made me uncomfortable, and quite frankly, I resented him for putting me in that position to have to spend time with him. How dare he? I couldn't get drunk going to his house. He couldn't pick up his own fork. He would fall on the ground in parking lots. He would be embarrassed. How dare he put me in a position not to be drunk and deal with him? That was my thinking. And on February 14th of 1992, my father passed away, and I found it quite advantageous to me to let that be used for you to buy me booze. And I went back to work at the Tropicana. I went to my father's funeral and used that as an opportunity for a new black dress, quite frankly. And that was as good of a daughter as I could be when I was 27 years old, deep into my drinking at the age of 27. And that year was a lot of drinking. I worked at the Santa Monica Pier again that summer. And at the end of that summer, I was going to take those 3 days off during the start of the school year and go work on my tan in Palm Springs, because any young lady knows it's really all about how you look. And I didn't make it that far. In the fall of 1992, I had had enough. I was with my sister, who was living in Los Angeles at that time. We had been drinking for several days and hanging out with people we probably shouldn't have been hanging out with. And at the end of 3 days of that debacle, lots of tequila, I came to on the morning of September 24th of 1992, faced having that moment of clarity, faced with the truth about myself as I saw it at that time. And there were two things I remember on that morning of September 24th, and they were that there was absolutely nothing I could do not to take a drink that day unless I had some help. And I also knew that there was nothing I could do to change my life in the way that I was living at that moment. That if I didn't get some help from somebody, that by the end of that day, it was going to be just another day like the previous day was. And I couldn't fathom the idea of continuing the way that I was living. And I think one of the really fortunate things for me is that I knew someone in Alcoholics Anonymous. That kind of happens when you're a bartender. You run into people who end up missing from your bar seats. And there was a woman, there was an article in Language of the Heart called Emotional Sobriety, The Next Frontier. And Bill Wilson describes a faulty emotional dependency. And that's what this woman was for me. She was someone who lived in money, property, and prestige, which really I should have tattooed on my forehead. It's always been a desire of mine, all those. And this woman had been very wealthy. She was from London and had an international family. She had been very, very successful at modeling. And she was an alcoholic, and she had gotten sober 3 years prior to me coming into AA. And she had always extended the hand of AA for me. And she had always been trying to be a good friend to me. But I didn't like those new AA friends. They didn't drink. And they were taking my friend away. I didn't want to be around them. And I didn't go to meetings with her. But on the morning of September 24th, 1992, I called her, and I was out of my mind, and she said, you know what, I'll come down and see you at work today. And so at noon, she showed up in the front door of that restaurant. I never remember seeing anybody so beautiful with clear blue eyes and standing tall and elegant. And she sat down with me on my lunch break and talked to me about Alcoholics Anonymous. And she suggested I probably should go to a meeting. And I found myself at my first meeting of AA the next night. It was on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, and they actually let me into that city. That's how I felt about it. I was quite fashionable. I mean, we're talking 1992 in black spandex, spiked boots, and leather jackets. And I walked into this beautiful Romanesque church in Beverly Hills, and there were these three men standing off to the side inside the gates of this church. And there was this very scary guy standing there. And I'll tell you why he was scary, because he looked kind of like Brett does tonight, except he had patches, leather patches on his elbows. The guys were wearing khaki pants, sport coats, and collared shirts. And I knew when I got here, and I wasn't going to admit it out loud, but I really wasn't good enough to be around people, men, who wore sport coats and khaki pants with creases down the front. And he turned around and he asked me, he said, how long are you sober? I said, today's my first day. He said, I'm really glad you're here. Welcome to AA. And I thought, yeah, you just want to date me. That's kind of like a default mode for me, you know. And at that time, and I went to this meeting, and you know, I haven't had to take a drink since that day. That was September 25th. But I'll tell you what I did find it necessary to do, and I didn't quite elaborate on that till I did my first inventory. After that meeting on Rodeo Drive, I don't remember what anybody said, but I kind of remember what I wore. I went to I hadn't slept for 3 days prior to that, and I went to that meeting. And after the meeting, I found it necessary to go to my local pharmacy and get some cough medicine that would help me sleep that night. And I had to change my sobriety date to September 26th, and that's my sobriety date today. You know, I don't take anything that affects me from the neck up today, because I want to be clean and I want to be sober today. And what happened for me is that I got excited about Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I started going to meetings in Hollywood because that's where all the musicians were. And I went to this Tuesday night meeting, and I realized that I had not dated anybody in that meeting, and I thought that it'd be a great place for me to start getting sober. And I went with my friend, and she introduced me to the program. But then, you know, I had gotten some money from my father's estate after that, after he had passed, and so I got me a little apartment down in Venice Beach, and got me a little car, and I really thought that it was kind of extreme to now, you know, drive 7 miles to Beverly Hills in Hollywood to go to a meeting. So I just started staying down in Venice Beach, because, you know, if you're going to be cool, you got to go to Venice. And there was like tattoos and piercings all over Second and Hill meeting on Venice Beach, and that's where I'd go. And I wasn't here for all the right reasons when I got here. I wasn't writing spiritual principles in order to stay sober when I first came here. I was trying not to live the life I was living, and I kept showing up. I was excited that I wasn't drinking, and I didn't know why I wasn't drinking. I just know that I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was meeting some really nice people who seemed to they were excited about their lives, and I didn't really know what it was they were doing, but I found myself at 2.5 years of going to noon meetings. I had returned to my infamous career of bartending on the beach, and 2.5 years, and I'm going to noon meetings if I could get out of bed in time to make it. And I used to see this guy there, and he had 16 years of sobriety, and he was a real attraction of that meeting. People were always wanting to shake his hand, and he always got asked to share, and he made everybody laugh in that meeting. And I was really attracted to something that he had, and I didn't realize that there was a power in his life. And I asked him to have coffee with me because I figured he wanted to date me, right? And we went down to Joni's Coffee Roasters in Marina Del Rey, and they would have these clear coffee mugs, and he was drinking black coffee at that time, and he said, "Can you see through the black coffee in the lower half of this coffee mug?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Well, that's you." And I'm like, okay. He goes, "Have you ever read the Big Book?" Maybe, probably not. But on page 55 of the Big Book, it says that deep down inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, though he may be obscured by pomp, by calamity, and by worship of other things. He goes, "That's where you are." And I thought, holy crap, there's someone that can read my mind. I knew at that moment that he knew exactly what was going on with me. But I had these 2 Pantera tickets in my back pocket. And I was not going to get into any kind of action in AA at that point because I wasn't going to miss that show. And so 2 weeks later, after taking a newcomer to that concert who, for some reason, got drunk while we were there. I didn't tell his girlfriend that, but... I found myself going to work one day, and I was working at a bar over in UCLA, in the village over there. I got busted for serving a minor. I got sent home and fired from that job, and there was no one for me to call. I didn't have any friends in AA. I used to go to this noon meeting in my gym workout outfit, and I would body hug the men with my legs and my arms at the door because when I came here, I was using every skill I knew when I got here, and it wasn't sobriety, it wasn't spiritual principles. I was the girl that came in and sat in the front row right about the time the meeting started. I'm the girl who would get up during the meeting to walk back in my spandex pants to get a cup of coffee so the guys could check it out. And that's what I knew. I mean, that was the power. This is what I was looking for attention. And so by the time I was desperate, I was not drinking. I was not working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was not into action here. I was what my sponsor later called a typhoid Mary because I was spreading the disease of AA in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was the only person I knew to call, and he said, he took my phone call and he said, "Oh, great. Now that you're not working, I'm speaking at a convention out in Palm Springs this week, and you can come out here and stay with the other women I sponsor, and you can get involved." And I said, "Did you hear what I said? I just got fired from my job. I don't have any money." And he hung up on me. I had a Jack Daniels jar full of quarters, and I called him back and I said, "Okay, where am I going?" He says, "This is the hotel we're going to be at." And I got $50 worth of quarters, and I drove 95 miles to Palm Springs, and there I was. And then I realized who the women were that he sponsored. I hated those girls. They look like these 3 back here, Petty, Nicole, and Lucy. They were girls who dressed like ladies. They were committed to Alcoholics Anonymous. They got to meetings early. They stayed with the women. They tried to be of service. They took commitments no matter where they went. I couldn't stand them. Because like that guy that I met my first night in Alcoholics Anonymous, those women represented everything that I wasn't, and that was a lady, and that was a woman with integrity and self-respect, and that wasn't me. I hated them. And boy, did I get lucky, because a couple weeks later, after not having any money, I got to move in with those girls. And they brought over their cars to my one-room apartment that had 11 pictures of myself on the wall. Yes. And they moved me in with them, and I got into this apartment with these crazy, dedicated women of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got into this apartment. I lived with 3 other women, and I had a job in my apartment. We rotated cleaning schedules in every room of the house. And when Wayne suggested, he goes, "I want you to get a job where you work 9 to 5. I want you to go to meetings at night of Alcoholics Anonymous every night of the week and get a commitment. I want you to be of service and go to meetings where there's enthusiasm for AA." He goes, "I suggest based on your history, that you might want to leave the men alone for a little while. And I could do that. And so I got stuck with these women taking commitments, and I got very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. I discovered conventions all over Southern California, and Wayne said to me, AA works. He goes, I want you to go to this home group, but AA works all over, and I want you to see how it works wherever you go. And we got very active, and here's what's happened, is I stuck with those women, and God, I hated them for a long, long time. And because they told me the truth about myself, they demanded that I be accountable for my behavior and my actions. I didn't like it one bit. I'm a bit of a princess, and I would never even admitted that till I was 15 years sober. Hey, good luck, Kelly. She's my twin. Anyway, so those women saved my life, and I left the men alone, and they were very lucky. And I got active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started to find the value of the relationships I had with the women in AA. And I learned how to become a lady. I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned how to be a contributing member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And by doing that, I started to become a good citizen in my community around me. I got a job making $6.50 an hour. And I hated that place. And when members of my home group would come in there, I would hide behind a desk because I was so embarrassed I worked there. But quite frankly, I was working at Kinko's. And when I was not capable of doing the job, you guys. I was not smart enough to handle my job. And I was with that company for 5 years and actually became one of the managers of that job along with one of my AA sisters. We worked together. And, what I found out is that it didn't matter how I felt. I had to show up. I just had to take the direction. It didn't matter how I felt. I just had to do what I was asked. And one of the great things Wayne said to me, he says, I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you like what I say. You just do as I say. And don't judge yourself in your own recovery and how you heal. Other people will show it to you first. And I was getting better, and I found a joy in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was about 5 years sober before I could say I really loved it here. And the less I resisted what I needed to do, the more I was able to really enjoy my time in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't date for 4.5 years in AA, and that was good. but I finally got hungry. I was really ready for someone to buy me dinner. And there was a gentleman in my home group that wouldn't leave me alone. And he was probably the first man I ever showed interest that had a job. And so after a couple of months of following me around, he asked me out, and he became my husband in 2000. We've been married almost 10 years, and he still has a job. That's great. So that's been good. I had an AA brother, and it's been 10 years, and I still can't talk about it. Wayne sponsored a group of guys, a couple. They had a big group in Las Vegas, wonderful active members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then they moved down to San Diego, and we'd go down and play basketball. We didn't play volleyball, then we played basketball. And Wayne said, there's nothing more fun than watching a bunch of alcoholics try to play team sports. And this guy he sponsored, Mike, got sick. And I didn't know Mike that well. I thought he was kind of whiny, but he did sponsor a lot of guys, and he had more time than me, so I couldn't say that out loud. And but Mike was a nice guy, and he got sick, and he didn't have a good prognosis for his illness. And Mike got Lou Gehrig's disease. That's what my father did. And I remember playing basketball on the court, and I was covering Mike, and he collapsed on the court, and he couldn't get up off the court. And I fell apart worse than I am now. And I couldn't. I was never of service to my father when he fell. And Wayne demanded that Mike get up off the court. He's like, you don't know the kind of example you're going to be to other people. You can't quit. He did start smoking, though. Because smoking wasn't going to get him anytime soon. The disease was. So Mike started chain smoking. But I got to be of service to Mike. Me and the girls that I lived with, we all would go to San Diego every Friday and take Mike a meeting. And Mike had a group of guys in San Diego that drove him to LA every Wednesday night in this van that they got. And he got to speak at our home group, and he got really emotional because he couldn't control his emotions anymore. And we were all out in the crowd snapping at him to tell him to get it together. And I got to help. I got to be of service to him, and in some small way, I got to make amends to my father. And so we lost Mike in 1999, and I got engaged the day after that. Maybe not the best timing, but that's how that worked out. And I could not have written that script. I could have not have predicted the kind of people I meet in Alcoholics Anonymous, the opportunity I have to be of service. I could never tell you. It's just that I showed up. I did what I was asked to do, and I came here, and things unfolded the way they unfolded. And because you're showing up here, you never know what's going to lie in store for us. I somehow got snickered into moving to Pennsylvania. I moved to Pennsylvania 2 years ago. My husband's from there, and he wanted to be back home. He wanted to be where snow landed for some reason, and so now we have this loving, happy family. I have 2 boys. I have 2 sons who are the life of my life, and they're with their aunt this weekend, and I get to be a mom today, and I have to practice every day on how to figure out how to do that. Thank you, Nicole, for helping me with that one. And I've become the kind of person that I never wanted to be when I was new. I have a life where I get to take my kids to Little League. I get to do stuff with the PTA. I get to work at the YMCA. I mean, this is like, woo! It sounds like that, but actually, you know what? I love that. I love being a mom, and I love screaming at my kids every day. And I got to start a meeting called the Lansdale Beginners Group in Pennsylvania, and they're so not used to what we do. And the core members of that meeting, which is almost 3 months old, is people with over 20 years. They love it. I feel excited about it. I'm so fortunate. And and then I get to come here, and I get to come here and see people who identify with me, we talk the same language, and I would not be. A year ago, I was in Akron for Founders Day, and I left Wayne's sponsorship for 10 years because I was looking for that half measures group that really had it going on, and I found several, but I thought I was going down the drain. I was not doing well. I showed up in Akron, and I was at a meeting we did this in Akron last year at Founders Day, and these people were there, and I was sitting in the back, and I was crying because they all had it going on, and I was completely separated because I'd been doing it my way for 10 years, trying to make it work. Needless to say, I'm back in the fold, and the last year has been a lot of change, and it's been tremendous, and I'm so grateful for the hope in my life today. So I welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I wish for all of you a tremendous weekend here in San Antonio, and thank you for my life today. Very grateful.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.